Good afternoon, South Africa. Afternoon, colleagues. My name is Karabo Khakhau. I, together with Vili Okamp, my colleague, are the new national spokespersons for the Democratic Alliance. Thank you so much for affording us the opportunity to be here today. The purpose of this press conference is to give an overview of the role of the Democratic Alliance in government and in Parliament moving forward. Joining me today at this press conference is our DA federal leader, John Steenhuisen, who will give us a broad overview, an aerial view of what the DA looks like right now and moving forward. We'll also have our Chief Whip in Parliament, George Michalakis, together with his Deputy Chief Whip, Baxolile, Nodada. They will give us an overview of the role that the DA will play in Parliament moving forward. And then, as I've announced, Vili is here with me today, and he's going to be chairing our question and answer session. So I'll now hand over to you, John.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Great to be with you today, and to those who are watching at home, thank you very much for joining us at this important press conference. After serving for 20 years as the official opposition in South Africa, the Democratic Alliance has now stepped into a new role as the second largest political party in the Government of National Unity, and I'm now the leader of the Democratic Alliance in the Government of National Unity. The 2024 elections threw up a result where no party was able to form a majority on its own. This meant that parties had to talk to each other in order to establish a parliamentary majority and a governing majority. In this new dispensation, and given these circumstances handed to us by the voters in this last election, I have led the DA into the Government of National Unity to keep a promise that we made to South Africans across the length and breadth of our country, and that was to rescue South Africa. Rescue them from what? Well, rescue them from the catastrophic consequences, the disastrous and gruesome consequences that would follow if the radical and anti-constitutionalist forces that gathered in this election were able to get their hands on the levers of power, which would unstitch our parliamentary democracy, which would tear apart our social fabric and begin to erode quite quickly the constitutional provisions that protect South Africans from the abuse of power. I think that the last week and a half in Parliament has been incredibly instructive for us as South Africans, and I think seeks to confirm the decision made by the Democratic Alliance to go into the Government of National Unity, to be able to form a strong bulwark of constitutionalists, Democrats, and people who believe in the reform agenda that South Africa needs in order to protect our country and its citizens from the ravaging effects of a radical populist agenda that would take South Africa backwards. And that has been on full display in Parliament this week. It has become blatantly clear in Parliament who the builders are and who the breakers are, who the shouters are and who the doers are, and who those people who want to unite South Africans are, and who those people who want to divide South Africans are. And we must not forget that parties like Umkhonto we Sizwe campaigned openly on a platform of discarding the Constitution, replacing democratically elected leaders with undemocratically elected leaders, with removing the constitutional rights of South African citizens, with unstitching the social consensus in South Africa, and with replacing the rule of law in South Africa with parliamentary sovereignty. And occupying those benches in Parliament on both the EFF side and the MK side. On the EFF side, we've seen the Matodzi affidavit that has come out this week that has confirmed that it was the EFF and its leaders who were at the very epicenter of the looting of VBS Bank. And let me remind South Africans that this wasn't just a bank robbery. This robbery stole from the poorest of the poor in South Africa. It stole from struggling municipalities, it stole from stokvels, it stole from savings clubs, and it stole from people who had invested their meager life savings in a bank looking for protection. And what was that money spent on? It wasn't spent on a social good. It wasn't spent on projects that would uplift and save the poor. Instead, the money was spent on Louis Vuitton items, luxury items, splurges at the Durban July on champagne and other luxury goods. And it shows very clearly that the EFF have no intention of being the vanguard of the poor. This is a mask that they use in order to justify the types of activities that they get up to. Sitting on the benches of MK are the likes of disgraced Judge John Hlophe. Sitting on the benches of MK are disgraced former Finance Minister Des van Rooyen. And sitting on the MK benches are the puppets of the Gupta regime, who were themselves involved in the very architecture of state capture in the country. We must not underestimate how much damage would have been done to South Africa if these forces had been allowed to get their hands on the levers of power, both in Parliament, but also at a national executive level. It is a commitment first and foremost to South Africa's and to our country's democratic dream that has led to the DA joining the government of national unity with other parties. But this also means that for the very first time, the Democratic Alliance has an opportunity to introduce a DA difference to national government by means of sound policy, clean, accountable governance, and a people-focused governance agenda. Our inclusion in the government of national unity has extended the DA's executive powers and strengthened our legislative capability, where we can govern better and scrutinize the executive more effectively for the benefit of all South Africans. As part of the GNU, the Democratic Alliance has taken up 6 cabinet positions, 6 deputy minister positions, 5 parliamentary portfolio chairpersons, and 3 committee chairperson positions. As we embark upon this new role in the highest branch of government, I want to reassure South Africans that the DA remains steadfast in our commitment to our founding values and principles and to the Constitution, which remains the existential bedrock of our society. In these new roles, we will demonstrate to South Africans across the country what the DA can do at a national level, given an opportunity to govern. And in Parliament, we will show South Africans how legislatures can and should work as effective oversight bodies that keep the executive in check. In this regard, I've issued an instruction to my parliamentary caucus in Parliament that they must hold DA members of the executive as accountable as they would hold members of other political parties. We need a legislature that is robust, that is happy to exercise proper oversight of executive members and ensure that citizens are getting value for money and accountability from those members of the executive. So while our new role may have evolved, our dedication to the people of South Africa has stayed the same. The DA is still here. We have not changed. And we are primed to position ourselves within this new paradigm. We will offer a unique vision for South Africa and the future of our country. And this means we will continue to challenge pieces of legislation that we disagree with. National policies and legislation such as the NHI, the Bella Bill, and others. We will continue to use our newfound powers to influence these, but we will not back down from being from holding those accountable for these particular laws. This is a cooperation and a collaboration. It is not a co-option. We turn now to the opening address tomorrow. And I don't think that we should take it lightly or simply for granted that tomorrow we will witness the opening of Parliament by President Ramaphosa, the president of a new government we have seen a peaceful transition of power from one government to another in a democratic election. This is not a given on our continent and certainly in other parts of the world. And I don't think we should underemphasize how significant this is and what a sign of democratic health it is for us as a country. We expect that in the opening tomorrow, President Ramaphosa will outline South Africa's reform agenda, which I'm proud to announce in many instances has alignment with DA policies as well. This is important when it comes to unlocking economic growth and building a capable state. And I'm glad to see that the DA's presence in the Government of National Unity is strong and visible. And I trust that the President's address tomorrow will reflect the plurality of voices that now exists in national government, and that he will commit himself wholeheartedly to this necessary policy shift, particularly after the highly successful Cabinet Lekgotla that took place over the last weekend, where consensus, solution finding, and evidence-based research has become the order of the day. In Parliament, the Democratic Alliance is now, in fact, in the strongest position we have ever been to play in the critical oversight role necessary to rescue South Africa. In just a few short weeks since their announcement and election, our ministers and chairpersons have begun with relentless determination the crucial work of rescuing South Africa and turning it around for the better. In this regard, I'm pleased to announce again George Michalakis will lead our party in the parliamentary environment as the Chief Whip, and will make sure that the DA caucus there focuses on its task of being a robust oversight role of the executive. As the DA remains an independent party within the Government of National Unity, we remain committed to our core values and principles, and will continue to serve South Africans with integrity, with accountability, and with a relentless pursuit of good governance. In this new chapter, the DA will embrace our newly elevated role in Parliament, and I'm proud to announce the election of Dr. Anneli Lotriet as Deputy Speaker, Werner Horn as House Chairperson, and Dennis Ryder as House Chairperson of Committees in the National Council of Provinces. As challenging as things may be, and as tough as the road ahead to reform will no doubt be, we move forward in this new direction, steadfast in our view that South Africa's best days still lie ahead of it. We look forward to playing our role in a constructive, solutions-oriented way to help that journey move quicker and more assuredly than ever before. The task ahead of the Government of National Unity is massive, and we must not underestimate the devastation and damage of the last 20 years, particularly the years under Jacob Zuma, and the damage that it has done to the institutions of state and to the very infrastructure that we need to use to turn things around. But I am convinced that the Democratic Alliance, bringing our side to the table, our expertise, our talents, our abilities, and our relentless pursuit of excellence for the people of South Africa, is going to stand this government in good stead. We promised in posters that we put in every city and town across the length and breadth of South Africa that we would do our part to rescue South Africa. And we now intend to set out fulfilling that promise and making sure that at the end of this term of office, that we have a South Africa that is more inclusive, that has a growing economy, that has jobs for more people and opportunities for all, like we've never seen before. That is our commitment to the 3.5 million people who entrusted us with their votes in this last election. But it is a wider commitment to everybody in South Africa that the Democratic Alliance will bring the very best of our talents, our abilities, our experience, and our energy and devotion to bear on making life better for all South Africans, regardless of their political affiliation. We ask South Africans to join us now in this new journey. The time for division and acrimony and recrimination and finger-pointing is past. Our country is in a desperate situation, and it needs the very best of all of us to unite, to work together to get us off this low growth, high debt, high unemployment trajectory and onto a new trajectory of hope, opportunity and change. And we call on all citizens to join us in this journey. A stark choice sits before every citizen at this time in our country. Are you a builder or are you a breaker? The Democratic Alliance has aligned ourselves firmly on the side of those who've chosen to build South Africa. And we hope that many, many more South Africans will join us on this journey to rescue our country and build a better tomorrow for all of us. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Our federal leader has outlined the pivotal and influential role that our cabinet ministers and deputy ministers can play in the executive branch of our government. This critical work, however, does not replace the role of the Democratic Alliance in the 7th administration of South Africa's Parliament. In fact, the role to be played by our members in Parliament in both the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces is as important as our role in the GNU. Our presence and influence in Parliament remains significant, and we will use this platform to advocate for policies that promote prosperity, equality and justice for all South Africans. We are dedicated to ensure that the government remains transparent, accountable and responsive to the needs of all the people. We are determined to play our role in restoring the dignity of Parliament as one of the distinct arms of government, independent of the executive and the judiciary. Moreover, we must and will defend our Constitution from any and all attempts to undermine, to weaken, to change without cause, or to minimize the absolute cornerstone role of the Constitution in our democracy. We have, for example, already seen statements from politicians wanting to reopen the debate on Section 25 and the issue of land expropriation without compensation. This matter has already been conclusively dealt with, and we will never condone grandstanding using the Constitution as a political football. We have a blend of experience and youth in both the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. It is a blend that we know will defend our Constitution, will hold sacred their oaths of office, and will faithfully fulfill their roles to represent the people of South Africa and hold the executive to account without fear or favour. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. The South African Parliament has all the mechanisms necessary to ensure that we do the work that South African voters asked of us in the 2024 elections. It is not the sole right of the opposition to hold the executive accountable. It is a duty of every member of Parliament, and as the second largest party, we take that responsibility very seriously. Gone are the days where backbenchers would defend and protect the executive at any cost. And we will always stand up for what is right. And as a party of the rule of law, we will not stand by while injustice prevails. And as we did over the past 2 decades, the DA will defend and protect the Constitution of our country. Parliament is not just an institution that makes laws. It does, and it must go further than that. It must be a body that ensures that these laws are just and do not infringe on the rights of citizens as enshrined in the Constitution and tangibly change people's lives for the better. Parliament must apply its oversight role in the strictest sense of the word. The people of South Africa have entrusted us to do just that, and they deserve nothing less. The National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces have mechanisms and systems to engage on prominent issues robustly at times, but always in the interest of the people. We will use our legislative responsibilities to revive the NK Deployment Bill and coalition bills, amongst others. We will drive issues of the VBS corruption and any other form of corruption and other core-related issues at the feet of Parliament, such as the rising cost of living, jobs, ensuring that the executive deliver services to the people of South Africa, regardless of where they may be, in cities, towns, or villages. The Democratic Alliance said during the 2024 election campaign that we will rescue South Africa, and that commitment has not changed. We now stand at the brink of a new era where the DA will do everything within its power, whether in the executive or in the National Assembly, the National Council of Provinces, provincial legislatures, metros and municipalities, to indeed rescue South Africa.
Good afternoon, colleagues from the media. My name is Willie Oukamp, and I would just like to thank our federal leader, John Steenhuisen, our Chief Whip, George Michalakis, and our Deputy Chief Whip, Nodada, for the addresses that you've made. I will now chair the question and answer session. I think the order rules will be that we'll take it, let's say, 3 to 4 questions at a time. If you want to ask a question, raise your hand. The mic will be brought to you. And when you've got the microphone, please just say what your name is, the news outlet that you represent, and also to whom your question is directed. Let's take it 3 to 4 questions at a time, and I will then direct to who must answer those questions. Thank you very much. Any questions? Got it there at the back. 1, 2, 3. Let's take these 3 first. At the back there.
Oh, okay. He wants to hold it because I've got 3 questions and he wants to run away if I ask too many. My name is Karine du Plessis. I'm a journalist for the Africa Report. I have, 3 questions, like I said. The one is, Minister Steenhuisen, you said that you would keep on holding the executive to account. How will you navigate the Pala issue if it comes up in Parliament again? If there is a vote of no confidence, how would you navigate that? My second question is the NHI bill. It sounds like at the Cabinet Lekgotla there was some kind of agreement as to how to go forward on this bill. Could you perhaps just give us some details on how you're navigating differences of opinion between parties on that? And my last question is, how is the GNU going? Everything seems to be happy and, I don't know, people are either in shock still after the elections results or it's really going well, like the President said over the weekend. What is your impression? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over here, Christian du Plessis, Netwerk 24.
Christian du Plessis, Minister Steenhuisen. My question, I have 2 questions. The first question is, how long do you expect the GNU to last? Do you expect it to last the full 5 terms, and why would you say that? And then when it comes to the Bella bill, that bill is on the President's table to be signed. What will the DA do with regard to the President or the bill? And do you think that this will cause friction within the GNU? Thank you.
Another question over there.
My name is Bulelani from SABC. Most of my questions are actually asked. Just a small one. Are you now dropping the title of being the official opposition to being the second biggest party? Is that what you want to be referred to going forward? Thanks.
Let's take one last question over here.
Morning, Jason Felix, News 24. Just a question for you, John. One question, 2 actually. These expectations that you've told us about, have you expressed this to the President at all? And if so, what was his response to it? And just to latch on to Karin's question, how much and how far do you think you can push DA policy in this new GNU cabinet? Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. I'm going to handle the questions as follows. Karin's questions about holding the executive to account on Pala, I will refer to John as well as NHI, and I will refer the question to how it is going to the GNU also to Minister Steenhuisen. John, as we know him. Christian's questions, how long it will last, and the Bella Bill, I will also refer to John. Then the dropping of the title of official opposition from Bulelani, I will refer to our Chief Whip George Michalakis. And then the questions from Jason Felix, I will also refer to John. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Willie. Thank you, Matthias.
That's right.
The last thing you want to happen in politics is lose your seat. Karine, thank you very much for the questions. How we'll deal with the Pala matter? Well, it depends what form it comes to Parliament. And we'd have to see what happens. Parliament, as you know, went through a process and in the 6th Parliament, and the matter was discharged then. It would depend what form that was brought back. Whether it's a motion of no confidence, well, we'd be unlikely to support a motion of no confidence because, frankly, Pala pales into insignificance in the light of the Matodzi affidavit and with the acts of blatant corruption, state capture that are evident by the people who would no doubt bring such a motion to try and bring the government down. So Bill Clinton famously said the biggest question in politics is compared to what? And compared that to what is sitting on the other side in the gruesome benches of the EFF and MK, I think that we will take our chances on the side of the president in this one, rather than take it with those who would seek to bring down a government so that they could then negotiate their way back into government for no altruistic purpose and no purpose other than to get their hands on state resources so they could start the flow of those resources into the networks that have now been starved by the fact that there's a new government in town. The NHI bill is a sticking point, and it has been a sticking point on the issues around the negotiation of the statement of intent, but it also has been a subject matter that has come up for discussion. I would say this: there's no single part of the GNU that does not fundamentally believe that we have to have universal access to basic healthcare and that we have to do something to improve the quality of care for every South African citizen, but particularly to ensure that nobody is deprived of good medical assistance based on their income. So we all agree with that. I think where there are differences is on the funding model, and I think around the issue of choice. And we are going to be making a very strong pitch that instead of us tying up the NHI with decades of constitutional challenge and the like, are there ways that we could look at that particular bill to achieve the outcomes that I believe we all want? Universal access to basic health care in a way that doesn't deprive people simply because they can't afford it. And how can we tweak that bill so we can start implementing something that can move towards improving the public healthcare sector and partnering with the private healthcare sector in a mutually symbiotic way that actually results in real universal basic access to healthcare? I believe, and it's my view, that the NHI in its current form will frustrate universal access to basic healthcare for at least a generation. I think that there are some areas where the bill can be amended or changed, or the approach and regulations can be changed to reintroduce choice, to treat the private sector as a partner in fixing the public healthcare sector, but focusing like a laser beam on improving the way in which citizens, particularly our poorer citizens, encounter healthcare at the primary level. Fixing our hospitals, making sure they're efficient and effective, bringing electronic systems so that their files can be moved amongst departments and different facilities easily, reducing queues and making sure that the quality of care is excellent. And I think that we can find each other as the parties in the GNU on that, because I think we all want the same thing. We just have slightly different ideas about how we're going to get there. So that will be an ongoing discussion within the GNU as we proceed. The GNU is going well. I would agree with the President's analysis. I think it's going a lot better than anybody expected. And certainly the anxiety going into the first Cabinet Lekgotla was pleasantly dissipated by the air of collegiality and constructiveness that existed in the room on that day. Obviously, I am not used to engaging with the ANC in a collegial and constructive way, but certainly there is a new mood and a new era that I think has begun. And I almost call it the curse of big problems, or maybe the blessing of big problems, is that our country faces a number of key challenges. Firstly, massive unemployment. Secondly, huge amounts of poverty. Thirdly, massive breakdown and setback in infrastructure. Fourthly, a governance model that has not delivered clean, accountable government. And I think that emerging from the Lekgote, and the President no doubt will be the lead in announcing some of the measures in his State of the Nation address tomorrow night, which we look forward to listening to. I think that there is a realization that there is far more that unites us than divides us in attempting to tackle these big issues. I'm not saying that maybe in 5, 10, 15 years' time, like other countries around the world that have first world problems that tend to divide their politics, I think that the blessing or curse of big problems is going to keep the GNU moving forward together, because there are huge mountains to climb, and they're going to require the best efforts of all parties to the GNU in order for us to surmount them. How long is the GNU going to last? Well, we've signed up for a 5-year period. We believe that 5 years would be significant if certainly we focus on some of the items that the President announces tomorrow evening. If we focus like a laser beam on those over the next duration of the 5-year term, that we will leave South Africa in a better place than it was when the GNU took office. And so we're committed to the full 5-year term. We're not waiting there with a trigger to pull to exit. But I have made it very clear that this is a collaboration and a cooperation. It is not a co-option. And I've also made it very clear, both publicly and privately, that we're not going to just simply be sitting there and pushed into a corner and told, you go and count the paper clips. We want to play a meaningful role in government. And we want to be able to make sure that the promises that we made in our manifesto to the people of South Africa are given expression. And the moment that starts to happen, or we have to betray a core value and principle, we will have to reconsider what we do. But as I've said, I'm very positive and optimistic. The mood is very good, much better than even I could have expected. And we will go in there and do what needs to be done. But as I've made it very clear, and as we demonstrated in Gauteng, we're not in government to be for governance sake or there for positions. We're there because we want to make a difference, and we want to be able to be part of rescuing South Africa. The moment that cannot take place, we'll obviously have to reconsider. But I think, as I've said, with the big problems facing South Africa, we're going to be jolly busy dealing with those things over the next 5 years, that I think there's going to be far less scope for some of the skirmishes that I think that everybody's waiting to see happen. Yes, there will be disagreements. Yes, there's 11 parties there. We don't all agree on the same things. We don't all have the same value and principle set. We don't all have the same manifesto. So, of course, there are going to be differences. But I think if we can demonstrate to South Africa that we can resolve those differences in a mature, collaborative and solution-oriented way that focuses on evidence-based research, that there is no problem, big or small, that we shouldn't be able, through dialogue and through the mechanisms outlined in the statement of intent, be able to solve. On Bella, I think that Honourable Rube has already announced on this. We are in charge of the basic education portfolio in Parliament and in the executive, and we obviously use our position there to influence this particular bill. Again, not all aspects of the bill are necessarily bad, and there are areas that we believe need to be re-looked at there to ensure that we support mother tongue education in South Africa, and that we don't dilute the role of school governing bodies particularly. School governing bodies are very important institutions that allow for parents to have a say in the type of education and the choices that are made for the education of their children. And I think that over-centralizing aspects of that, I think, would be a setback. But there are other aspects of the bill that are not necessarily bad. and we would obviously look to try and use our influence now in the executive to have these discussions. There's a commitment to having these discussions, both on these and on NHI, and we will find each other, I have no doubt, on these things. Jason, my handwriting is so terrible here, I have lost your first question.
So, if you don't mind, Lisa,
Sure.
it's just the expectations that you've given us today here at the level of the president.
Yes. So, yeah.
What was his response?
Yeah. So obviously at the
second one.
what was the second one?
Just on the how far you
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yes, we obviously the cabinet Lekgotla, and obviously I don't want to give too much away because the president will be taking the lead on the announcement of that tomorrow. Every minister, every participant was given an open opportunity to say what was on their mind and to put their ideas or view on the way forward there. But I must say that the Department of Performance Monitoring and Evaluation and Minister Ramokgopa particularly had done an excellent job of synthesizing the various manifestos of the parties to the GNU and has produced a document which, by and large, has broad agreement. There are obviously a few issues that we've agreed to send down to work streams and cabinet committees, and I'm sure that will come out in the coming days. But I think that Minister Ramokgopa's department and her had done a very good job of capturing the essence of what the priorities of the government needs to be going forward. Bearing in mind that you cannot do everything in 5 years, and there are going to be trade-offs. But those trade-offs, I believe, will be made in the best interest of firming up a good foundation for growth, for economic recovery, for employment, and for ensuring that there is a social safety net for the poorest of the poor in South Africa to usher them through a period where we need to get the economy moving and growing so that more of them can be brought into employment. So I think there's going to be a very good balancing act between what are the immediate priorities and how do we make sure that we bring South Africans along with us as these reforms start to kick in and we start to see economic growth accelerating, job creation moving forward, service delivery improving, clean government being able to have more money to spend on people rather than money being siphoned out of the system into corrupt networks. So I think that the President's announcement tomorrow night will expand more on what was discussed at the Cabinet Lekgotla. And I think that the plans that were put on the table there have broad buy-in from large parts of the GNU parties, and we have to now work together to make them a reality. How much of DA policy would be there? Well, I think that, as I said, there's a fair synthesis, I believe, of what of what's going to happen there. There's some of the things we've been calling for a number of years that we're very pleased to see have been included in there, and I think when it is announced, you'll be able to pick out the synthesis. The important thing is that this is not a one-party government. It is a multi-party government of national unity. And the parties to it must see something of themselves represented in the program of government. And as I say, I think Minister Ramokgopa and her team have done a very good job on making sure that that is in. I'm very comfortable that DA values and principles and some of the DA programs of action are sufficiently represented in those documents, and no doubt will hopefully come through in the President's speech tomorrow evening, which we are greatly looking forward to as the scene setter for the process going forward to get the government of national unity moving at high speed, to rapidly accelerate our economic reforms, and to make sure that we deliver to the people of South Africa on the hope that the GNU has created, that their lives will get better. Thanks. I think I've answered the ones I needed to. George, you were up next.
Thank you, John. Just with regards to the question from the SABC with regards to the status of official opposition, look, by definition, the official opposition is the largest party that is not in government. We can't claim that title, but it does not take away from the fact that we are the second largest party in Parliament by some margin, and we very much intend taking up that space in making sure that Parliament functions the way it should and to get Parliament to where it is supposed to again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John and George. Any further questions from the journalists here in the room? Okay. We've received quite a large number of online questions as well that have been forwarded to me. We will unfortunately not be able to handle all of them. We will sit here the whole day. I am going to handle a few of them that has been sent through. If you can just give me time so that I can just quickly look at my notes. There's a question to you, John, that says, what are the DA minister's priorities for your first 100 days? What are the priorities set out for the DA ministers? And then there's Tandu Mayeko from Business Day asked the following questions. The DA is a signatory to the GNU along with 9 other parties, including the ANC. Will the DA continue to pursue legal action against ANC-aligned policies in government, NHI, Bellable, etc.? I think you have explained a lot of that, John. And then, will the DA continue pursuing its cadre deployment case against the ANC? Please explain the answer. So if we can maybe just handle those 2 questions from now from your side, John.
Great, and thank you very much for those questions. What are the DA minister's priorities for the first 100 days? Well, since being appointed, the ministers have been in 3 weekends worth of intensive workshops around what needs to be done in each of those departments to be able to turn them around. I can, as one of them, say that opposition is a lot easier than being in government, for absolute sure. I mean, to write a budget speech this week for the first time for a department, I can tell you it's much easier to arrive with the AG's report and the legacy report of the previous committee and write a barnstorming speech than it is to actually get to grips with the complexity and the million moving parts in each of these ministries. Nonetheless, I think that the priorities are to examine the state of the department, to see where the low-hanging fruit and the quick wins are in order to clean up government where there are obvious corruption issues. And I think both in Home Affairs, and you've seen Minister McPherson's expose of the cyber scamming there, to look for those leakages and try and shut them off. And then to obviously look at the legislative environment governing those portfolios and whether those need to be updated and modernized, governance structures, and then obviously looking at what are the bottlenecks and impediments to accelerating service delivery for citizens on the ground in terms of each of those departments. We want the experience of citizens with those departments to be one that they regard as quality, value for money, and a good experience. And so we would want to make that happen. And then obviously look at setting up through a government promise system, a GPS system, the key focus areas for the next 5 years. As I've said, it's not going to be possible to do everything that needs to be done to fix South Africa in the next 5 years. There's a lot to do to reverse 30 years of state capture, of damage to infrastructure, both economically and governance infrastructure, and it's going to take some time. So it is going to have to become a prioritization operation within those departments to where do you focus your attention and resources? What are the things that we need to do to address the big problems so that we're able to create a solid foundation for future governments to layer on to get the reform agenda going forward. Are we going to pursue various cases? Obviously, where we can find each other at an executive level, it's far more preferable to going to court, and far cheaper, I might add. Churchill famously said, jaw is better than war. So if we can talk things through, if we are able to exert some influence on fixing some of these things without having to resort to legal action, we will do that. But on matters of great principle and matters where a precedent is necessary, we will continue to see those cases through to conclusion because we made commitments to voters on those particular matters, and I would not want to see that commitment being walked out on. So issues like the cadre deployment case transcend politics, it transcends parties. It is an important principle that we believe needs to be established, not only for the GNU, but for governments to come in years and decades to come. And we would like to see that precedent being created, that cadre deployment in its current form is not constitutional, and that you need to be able to build an effective, non-partisan civil service that will allow you to build a better, capable state that is then able to deliver. So we believe that the cadre deployment case will set a precedent that transcends the parties to the GNU, but gives us an opportunity to be able to set a new benchmark in South Africa for the type of civil service and public service that we would like to see as a legacy for South Africa going forward, so that never, never, and never again will we see a situation where the state capture was allowed to happen through the cadre deployment mechanism. Remember, state capture was only possible because you were able to deploy cadres into those positions to be able to help those people, ironically many of them sitting on MK's benches now, to capture the state and to siphon the money and opportunity out of it, not for the service of the people, but for the benefit of politicians and the networks that operated around them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John. Colleagues, with regards to the online questions, as I said, there's quite a lot of them, and I do not have all the names of the journalists asking those questions. I'm going to handle them as they come in. There's a question, and I think that question will be directed to you, George, is with regards to us having 12 ministers and deputy ministers in cabinet, what is the value of us having a deputy speaker, a House chairperson, as well as the chair of chairs in the NCOP, together with the committee chairpersons of several other committees? What is the value thereof for the DA? That is directed then to you, George, if you want. John, you can also cut in on that. Sure.
Thank you very much, Willie. Well, it's quite important. All of these are presiding officers of Parliament. Obviously, when they sit in the chair, they have to be neutral and facilitate the debate. But it's quite important to have that neutrality, but also the presence in making sure that these presiding officers obviously sit on various bodies that run Parliament on a day-to-day basis, and to make sure that not only government works well, but the legislative arm as well. It's quite important to have that influence in that sphere. With regards to the committee chairpersons, it comes to Parliament's role of accountability. The committee chairpersons are the custodians of the work of those committees, and they need to ensure that those ministers and deputy ministers are held accountable. Again, it comes to the accountability role of Parliament, and if we want our democracy to work as effectively as it should, government itself is not the only component that needs to work, neither is the judiciary. Parliament itself should also play that all-important role of oversight, and having committee chairpersons from the DA that know what the role of Parliament is and that will do a competent job is going to play that role in fixing Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George. John, anything from your side on that? I think George covered that. Colleagues, one last online question. Let me first ask, are there any other questions from the floor? It seems that we've answered all the questions from the floor nicely. The last question from the floor, John, again to you is, should there arise conflict within the GNU, how will you approach it in handling that conflict and preventing it from spiraling out?
Right. Well, I think that's a very good question, and the statement of intent set out a dispute resolution mechanism in there, but it would no doubt involve the leaders of the parties to the GNU coming together to be able to discuss, to consult, to try and find a compromise in each of those cases. One of the things that we've learned both from our experience at a local government level, and certainly what I picked up very clearly from the coalition study tour that was undertaken to Germany last year, under the auspices of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, was that conflicts are inevitable in coalitions. They will take place. As I said earlier, you've got a complexity. Germany, they often have 3 or 4 parties. We've got the complexity of 11 parties. That is a lot of complexity to have to deal with. And the thing is that these disputes and discussions must take place behind closed doors. I think the worst thing for any coalition or any government of national unity that we could be in is to be bickering and fighting in public. So I think every effort needs to be made, and certainly I've committed my party to doing that, to making sure that where there are disputes in the GNU, and they will arise, that these are dealt with in a mature way, in a way that's constructively based on finding a solution to it, and that we give ourselves the space within the government of national unity behind closed doors to work these things out before necessary going and taking public postures and positions on it. South Africans, I think, are desperate for change. I think they're tired of the decades of political bickering. They've seen metros and local government descend into chaos as a result of that. I think that there's a huge burden on the parties to the GNU to demonstrate to South Africans that coalitions and unity governments can work, and that they can work together constructively in the service of the people, not the political parties. And I think that we are hoping to herald in a new era through the GNU to be able to find this new mature politics, which we hope will eventually filter down to local government level as well, where it is desperately needed. The reality is the state of local government in the country, particularly in some of the larger metros, is dire and racked by infighting and inertia, and we need to find a way to unblock that. And I believe that the GNU can set the tone and the posture for that more constructive environment of working together to take place. This is essential, I believe, going forward. The reality is that proportional representation systems like ours always end in coalition. And I believe that certainly in my lifetime, we won't see any party having its own majority at a national level ever again. And that after the local government elections and after the 2029 elections, similar negotiations are going to have to take place, where voters are deciding in greater numbers that they're not giving parties their own majority, and that they're wanting parties to collaborate and work together, and indeed are forcing them to do so with the outcome of the votes. So I think the way in which the GNU approaches conflict and conflict resolution and solution finding is going to be fundamentally important to set the tone for this new era of government in South Africa. Gone are the days of one-party domination to a large degree, and I think that we're going to see more of this collaborative approach having to be adopted by dint of electoral outcomes. And so it is very important that the leaders of the GNU understand the burden and responsibility that rests on all of our shoulders to make sure that we show the public that we really are making a genuine effort to make things work, to resolve conflicts in a mature way, and to come up with solutions and outcomes that work for them, not for the partisan political parties involved. Thanks.
Sorry. Thank you very much, John. Colleagues, I want to thank everybody from the media that was here today. I also want to thank all our viewers at home that tuned in and listened to this press briefing. There will be an opportunity for one-on-ones with the media houses that are present here. I will, with some of my colleagues, just liaise that afterwards. But I really want to thank everybody. I want to wish you a very good day, and let's look forward to tomorrow's opening of Parliament address, and let's take this country further. Thank you very much.
Billy.
I am a mother. I am a father. I'm a daughter. I am a son. I believe in freedom. Freedom to earn a living, go where I want, love who I want, say what I believe, and pursue my dreams. I am brave. I am a provider. I believe in fairness. A fairness where our achievements are determined by our choices and hard work. I am a leader. I believe in opportunity. A nation where opportunity is plentiful and everyone's rights are protected. I believe in diversity. Every person has a unique perspective and an important role to play in building our nation. We do not judge each other by how we look, but by who we are. We are South Africans working together. We are the Democratic Alliance.
Thanks for watching. All across our beautiful country, people are joining forces to elect the new government that can rescue South Africa. Like and follow us on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Please share our videos with friends and family. Let's rescue South Africa.